Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video of myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is a Ukraine war news update, a little bit of Iran war at the end, not so much as yesterday, for the 21st of June 2025. We're going to start with Poland. The theatre in Krakow has moved the Ukrainian flag indoors after receiving repeated threats. This is really sad. The flag had flown since February 2022 in a symbol of solidarity. The director cited safety concerns for staff and property, saying the theatre cannot stand against brute force alone. Really sad, and it just also shows shifting sands in terms of some of the, particularly the case in Poland actually, with Gregor's Baum and Brown and others on the far right, populist far right, Confederation Party and whatnot, being so anti-Ukraine. It's heartbreaking. It's like it's so normalized, this idea that you can defend what Russia are doing against Ukraine and Ukraine is somehow the bad guys. It's just a complete moral inversion. Blows my mind. A historic theatre, there you go, forced to move its Ukrainian flag indoors. Julius Slovatsky Theatre had displayed that flag outside since February 2022. The theatre director characterised the threats as an attack on freedom and solidarity. The move followed an incident where a supporter of far-right politician Gregor's Brown, there you go, physically tore down the flag and or allegedly threatened the director. In fact, it's that exact. I hadn't read this one, that post actually, so it's exactly the person I was talking about. And again, like, I don't want to keep characterizing because of my slightly left-wing inclinations, the fact that this is always the right wing that's attacking Ukraine, but actually at the moment it really genuinely is, and by the right wing I mean the far right. And I know there are so many centre right people who are fully in support of Ukraine and watch my channel, but it's such a shame that this kind of weird ultra nationalism of the far right is so, I mean, it's already fairly morally repugnant to me anyway. But when you start victim blaming and attacking Ukraine and ripping down Ukraine flags, like, you are just essentially saying, I am a fan of dictatorship and fascism. That is where I'm at. And I find that reprehensible. Interesting quote here from Italian Defense Minister Guido Crosetto. Said that NATO, as it is, no longer has a reason to exist. And there's something in this. This is something I've been thinking about for a long time, which is there's been this geographical harnessing of NATO such that it's the North Atlantic Treaty Organization for a start. So the name gives you a sense of it being tied to a particular area. At a time when kind of the centre of the world was Europe, as far as some of these big powers like Europeans saw it, and the US to a degree. So it was all about the US through Europe to the Soviet Union, right? And that was where the world was, and Africa was just something else, and South America, yeah, and Asia was like, okay, China was nothing really to worry about. But as the world has changed over the last 70 years, and Asia and Oceania or Australasia and Africa and South America have all kind of changed to a large degree, you know, Brazil being this huge geopolitical player, I think, and economic powerhouse compared to what it used to be, and China just erupting onto the international stage in the way it has. How does that affect NATO? So here he says the UN counts in the world as much as Europe does. Nothing less than a national team, less than China, less than India, or less than Israel. So NATO, as it is, no longer has a reason to exist, because once the centre of the world was the Atlantic Ocean, now the centre of the world is the world itself. So once the world was the United States and Europe, now there is everything else with which a relationship must be built. If NATO was founded to guarantee mutual defence, to ensure peace, then the more it expands, the more it becomes an organisation that takes on the role at a global level, engaging with the global south, from Brazil to India to Australia to Japan, and in so doing, it transforms into something profoundly different. In this transformation, Article 5 becomes the foundation of the UN, that is, of a multilateral body dedicated to defending a world that is increasingly integrated in its pursuit of peace. Otherwise, we will fail to achieve the goal. We will share a system of security where everyone can engage based on rules that apply to all. This is why there's been a kind of move for some to have a European form of NATO, and because the US has become so unreliable, kick out the US, and then it's NATO minus the US. But then, of course, you've got Canada, and there are certainly interesting discussions to be had around this. This person said these people are pro-Russian and a danger to the security of Europe. I don't necessarily agree. I think Crocetta has previously been very supportive of Ukraine, at least rhetorically. But I think there needs to be a discussion over the future of NATO, and whether it looks at the Indo-Pacific, for example, as in its remit at all. Right. I have done a breaking news update on this chap, Sergio Gore, who's right at the center of the American government, right in the middle of Trump's posse. In fact, he's supposedly one of the three most important people, where Stephen Miller is a person that gives all policies to Trump, and you've got a guy who will... no, it's not Schiff, something like that, who gives all of the information to Trump in terms of curated news sources and whatnot. And then you have this guy, Sergio Gore, who appoints everyone to the White House. 4,000 people, like insanely important loyalists. He is essentially replicating the agenda in personnel form. And he appears to have a dubious background. So he hasn't passed his background check. They haven't essentially gone through. Well, there were claims he hadn't filled out SF-86, which is a 100-page form you're supposed to fill out before you get employed into positions like this. But then it's like, no, Donald Trump has kind of testified for me, if you like. I don't need to do this, and he poured scorn on that whole process, which looks entirely dubious to begin with. And then it's like, okay, you might have filled it out now, but it hasn't been appraised. And then there is this idea that no one knows where he was born. So he's supposed to have come from Malta, but then he was called by people in Malta the Russian boy. And although he's stated to the New York Post that he wasn't born in Russia, at the time he was born, it would have been the USSR. So he might have got around that issue by saying, I wasn't born in Russia, brackets, but I was born in the USSR. Anyway, even if this guy isn't a spy or Russian plant or whatever, he is hiding something, and the White House has not gone through its rigorous checks. This guy is unvetted, and that is absolutely unacceptable for someone right at the heart of the administration. Most of you took my video as it was intended, which was, this is interesting, this could well be exceptionally dodgy, but at the very minimum, it's going to be like, this needs to be looked into, and there needs to be a vetting process upheld. I think one of you said, "Oh, you've gone really downhill in your content because effectively this is tinfoil hats and conspiracy theories." The fact is, this has actually been picked up now by a number of places, and in fact, Igor Sushko has been challenged by Sergio Gore. This is becoming a legal thing. He's according to Shushko, Gore is using legal intimidation to demand that we remove our citations in news articles, questioning his background, and even our reference to Elon Musk calling him a snake, which was totally true, right? So there looks to be an attempt to put a lid on this by Gore himself, demanding that posts be removed or he's going to sue for defamation, so on and so forth. So this is getting quite major. It's been reported in a number of places. And Lev Parnas, and he's from this kind of murky world of Ukrainian, Russian politics and knowing all these contacts in and around the White House in this sphere. He's written a Substack piece on this. Meet Sergio Gore, or should we say Sergei Goryachev, Trump's top hiring official, may be a Russian spy. Gorokovsky could well be his name. There's something amiss there at the very minimum. So I think I was well justified in posting that piece, and still absolutely am. Now, just to talk about appointments, I've been meaning to talk about this for some time. I don't think I've told you. I get confused because I was talking about this down a pub about a week ago. And this is something I had lined up for one of my American videos, but I haven't quite got round to it. But Trump appoints a 22-year-old gardener and grocery store assistant to lead US terror prevention. I've talked at depth about how unserious this administration is in the appointments that have been made, whether it be Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., Pete Hegseth, and others. You know, these it's poor form, and the Doge people are appointed, terrible. Well, actually, now we've got Trump appointing a 22-year-old ex-gardener and grocery store assistant to lead the US terror prevention. That's his CV. I mean, he is out of university, but that's his working CV is gardener and grocery store assistant. The inexperienced 22-year-old, reportedly tasked by Donald Trump with tackling US extremism, was working as a neighborhood gardener just 5 years ago and in a grocery store as recently as August 2023. The Daily Beast can reveal Thomas Fugate, who graduated from the University of Texas at San Antonio just 12 months ago, is currently heading up the Center for Prevention Programs and Partnerships at the DHS, so the Department of Homeland Security, as first reported by ProPublica. There's a very in-depth ProPublica article on him. The intern in charge, meet the 22-year-old Trump's team picked to lead terrorism prevention. 1 year out of college and no apparent national security expertise. Thomas Fugate is the Department of Homeland Security official tasked with overseeing the government's main hub for combating violent extremism. It's an absolute joke. Like, you know my view on Trump, but honestly, he's dangerous. He's dangerous, and it's a joke. Quote, maybe he's a wunderkind, maybe he's Doogie Howser and has everything at 21 years old, or whatever he is, to lead the office. But that's not likely the case, said one counterterrorism researcher who's worked with CP3 officials for years. Quote, it sounds like putting the intern in charge. In the past 7 weeks, at least 5 high-profile targeted attacks have unfolded across the US, including a car bombing in California, gunning down of 2 Israeli embassy aides in Washington. Against that backdrop, current and former national security officials say the Trump administration's decision to shift counterterrorism resources to immigration and leave the violence prevention portfolio to inexperienced appointees is, quote, reckless. Quote, we're entering very dangerous territory, one longtime US counterterrorism official said. The fate of CP3 is one example of the fallout from deep cuts that have eliminated public health and violence prevention initiatives across federal agencies. The once bustling office of around 80 employees now has fewer than 20, former staffers say. Grant work stops, then restarts. One senior civil servant was reassigned to the Federal Emergency Management Agency via an email that arrived late on a Saturday, so on and so forth. And then you've got this guy in charge. I mean, it's all just so deeply unserious. I mean, that ProPublica article, very well worth watching. Daily Beast sort of talks about this, but you know, this seems to be going on across the US government, where you have, and actually you can say into the DoD, where they purge all of these experienced generals and admirals and not replace them yet because they don't have the people to replace them, because it's all so ideological and issue ridden. Just honestly incredible. Since leaving college, Fugate has had a meteoric rise in the political world, having served as an advanced team member on President Donald Trump's 2024 campaign, according to his LinkedIn page. An avowed Republican, he also interned at the Heritage Foundation. Who knew? That's where these people are coming from. Heritage Foundation writes Project 2025, blueprint for the government. It's being laid out. I mean, goodness me, Heritage Foundation are laughing at the moment. They are getting everything they want. The think tank behind Project 2025 and for Texas Representatives Terry Wilson and Steve Allison. So on and so forth. I mean, you can go and look into this in greater detail, but it's so indicative of what is going on at the moment in the US government. I have such a scary video on the ICE raids taking place at the moment that I'm going to do hopefully today, but it just, honestly, it's so depressing. Then we have Ukraine envoy. This is Ukraine envoy meeting Lukashenko, Keith Kellogg. Here he is. Not just a handshake, but a hug. That's nice. It's Hug a Dictator Day today. One of the darkest days in US history, says Jay in Kiev. Trump now embraces yet another absolutely brutal monster. So we have Lukashenko giving a big hug to Keith Kellogg. Special Kherson Cat says, Trump's special envoy Keith Kellogg met with Alexander Lukashenko, the most pointless meeting that will achieve nothing except legitimizing Lukashenko's dictatorial regime in Belarus. This marked the first meeting between such high-ranking Western officials and Lukashenko since 2020, when his re-election triggered widespread protests and led to Belarus's political isolation. This is all about normalizing relationships and getting dictatorships back on board. It's, yeah, we love dictatorships and we love crazy interns who have no experience being in charge of counterterrorism, and we love unvetted Russians potentially being at the very center of the White House. And. In fact, if you translate some of this, Anton Gerashenko has, my friend, look who is here. Hello, my dear. Lukashenko met President Trump's special envoy, Keith Kellogg. I mean, it's so horrible. On the other hand, you know, what the frick is Europe doing? So this was, if you remember, the headline from just May the 10th. So 1 month and 11 days ago, we had Starmer and Macron and Merz and Tusk in Kiev talking about how the 30-day ceasefire needs to be input now, or Russia will face massive sanctions. Some sanctions have come from Europe. There is no doubt about that. No sanctions come from the US. Remember, they phoned the US and they had the backing of Trump at that time, and that seems to be the key. They then lost the backing of Trump, and then they couldn't put in these massive sanctions. But it's so sad that this was a month ago. Everyone seems to have failed, and unfortunately, you know, you can quite easily say they failed largely because the backing of the US was just taken away. Now, talking of which, Trump got away with blocking NATO from even mentioning Ukraine in the upcoming summit, and is now blocking US senators from the same. Putin owns Trump so completely, says Jay in Kiev. Well, I think he's somewhat right here. Listen to Trump himself.
Ukraine, you've been making progress towards a peace deal, but I don't know if you know this, but Lindsey Graham.
Now, by the way, I don't know if you can hear the questioner very well here. This is an example, and it's heinous. It's a heinous example of Trump surrounding himself by obsequious, fawning press who do not ask him difficult questions, and their questions are loaded with ideology. So listen to what this questioner says.
But I don't know if you know this, but Lindsey Graham and Mike Pompeo were there on the ground in Ukraine, seemingly doing the opposite, trying to provoke the Ukrainians to...
So Lindsey Graham and Mike Pompeo were on the ground in Ukraine trying to do the opposite of bringing peace. Provoking the Ukrainians to keep fighting. So this question is already completely loaded.
Think of that. Well, we're going to see, and people have to be very careful with what they say. They got to be very careful with their mouth, because their mouth can get them into a lot of trouble.
So essentially, he's threatening Lindsey Graham and Mike Pompeo. You need to be careful what you say. Your mouth is going to get you in trouble. In other words, shut up. We can't have Russia being criticised in NATO in a communique, like we couldn't have them criticised in the G7 communique, like we couldn't have them criticised in the UN resolutions, like we couldn't. I mean, this man is so freaking Russian, it blows my mind. Trump says he also says the US shouldn't match 5% defence spending target that he is demanding from NATO allies. So he told journalists the US, quote, supported NATO for so long and previously covered almost 100% of the costs. Meanwhile, Russia spends 6.2 to 6.3% of its GDP on defence, the highest since the Cold War. Trump specifically criticised Spain, calling it a very low payer, after it refused the 5% target, and Canada, which he claimed paid the least because officials figured the United States protects us for free. Eastern European nations like Lithuania and Estonia committed to exceeding 5% of GDP on defence, while Poland plans to reach 4.7% this year, currently NATO's highest state. So there are European states that pay more than the US as a percentage of their GDP, and there are nations that spend a lot less, Spain being one example. Now, while he's right to criticise Spain and Canada here, this idea that he is going to ask for 5%, but he doesn't think the US should go to 5%, just tells you everything you need to know there. It's just absolutely incredible. Now, US senators from both parties are pushing NATO to consider Ukraine's membership at next week's summit, opposing the Trump administration's pro-Russia stance, according to the Kyiv Insider, which states that Senator Shaheen cites Ukraine's status as the largest, most experienced army in Europe with real combat-tested tech. US Senate Foreign Relations members urge NATO to seriously consider Ukraine's membership ahead of the summit. Senator Risch says Putin's invasion backfired, strengthening NATO with rapid additions like of Finland and Sweden. Trump officials warned of changes to US troop deployments, sparking fears of a pullback from European security. And Senator Shaheen warns Russia has troops in Belarus and threatens the Balkans, Baltics and the Black Sea. Senators also slammed Trump's administration for resisting a lower oil price cap, saying it eases pressure on Russia's war economy. Baltic nations push for accelerated military aid to Ukraine and political steps towards NATO integration, viewing Ukraine as direct protection buffer. So that was all in the Kyiv Insider. And then, unfortunately, yes, we will be concentrating quite a lot on what Donald Trump says. And my goodness, he has lost the plot. So essentially, he's just issued 3 unhinged tirades about a Fox News commentator, chair of the Federal Reserve, and not being awarded the Nobel Peace Prize within the last hour. He's gone completely mad. So this is Trump, or at least people writing on his behalf. And it is just pure insanity. Trump says, I'm very happy to report that I have arranged, along with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, a wonderful treaty between the Democratic Republic of Congo and the Republic of Rwanda in their war, which was known for violent bloodshed and death. More so even than most other wars, and has gone on for decades. Representatives from Rwanda and the Congo will be in Washington on Monday to sign documents. This is a great day for Africa and, quite frankly, a great day for the world. I won't get a Nobel Peace Prize for this. I won't get a Nobel Peace Prize for stopping the war between India and Pakistan. And by the way, India just formally came out and denied that he did what he said in that, and that it wasn't his responsibility. But we're just about to hear from Pakistan on that. So fascinating. But India denied this, but he said, I won't get a Nobel Peace Prize for stopping the war between India and Pakistan. I won't get a Nobel Peace Prize for stopping the war between Serbia and Kosovo. I won't get a Nobel Peace Prize for keeping peace between Egypt and Ethiopia. A massive Ethiopian-built dam, stupidly financed by the United States of America, substantially reduces the water flowing into the Nile River. And I won't get a Nobel Peace Prize for doing the Abraham Accords in the Middle East, which, if all goes well, will be loaded to the brim with additional countries signing on and will unify the Middle East for the first time in the ages. No, I won't get a Nobel Peace Prize no matter what I do, including Russia, Ukraine and Israel, Iran. Whatever those outcomes may be, but the people know, and that's all that matters to me. Obviously, it's not all that matters. You totally want a Nobel Peace Prize. It is driving most things you do. But unfortunately, you won't get it. At least I freaking hope you won't get it for completely capitulating to the dictator Vladimir Putin. It's an absolute disgrace. It should invalidate you from ever getting it point blank. There you go. Now, the government of Pakistan have then released this text. Absolutely stunning. Government of Pakistan recommends President Donald J. Trump for the 2026 Nobel Peace Prize. The government of Pakistan has decided to formally recommend Donald J. Trump for the 2026 Nobel Peace Prize in recognition of his decisive diplomatic intervention and pivotal leadership during his recent India-Pakistan crisis. I mean, incredible. Because India have just completely denied this. The international community bore witness to unprovoked and unlawful Indian aggression, which constituted a grave violation of Pakistan's sovereignty and territorial integrity, resulting in the tragic loss of innocent lives, including women, children and the elderly. In exercising its fundamental right to self-defense, Pakistan launched Operation Bunyanum Mahsus, a measured, resolute and precise military response carefully executed to re-establish deterrence and defend its territorial integrity while consciously avoiding civilian harm. Now, as far as I can see, that's bona fide, right? It may well be that's some kind of fake or something. But my position would be this is very clever from Pakistan, which is play to his ego, stroke his narcissism there, and say, well, we'll be supportive of you in your desire for a Nobel Peace Prize, which then will completely bring Trump around to be more supportive of Pakistan. Of course it will. And I think it's another example of these governments and dictators and entities and politicians knowing how easy it is to manipulate Trump with just fawning rhetoric. Yeah. So that's that. But he had two other mental tirades. And this tirade, as someone was saying, like any other time in history, if the president had done this tirade against the chair of the Fed in the United States, this would be front page news for weeks. But it's so normalized, the mental stuff that this man says, that he says this and it's kind of lost. It's just lost in the chaos. But this is insane. And also absolutely incredible that he would say this out loud in public. Shouty. Too late, Powell complains about costs, much of which were produced by the Biden fake government. What does that even mean? But government in scare quotes. But he could do the biggest and best job for our country by helping to lower interest rates. And if he reduced them to the number they should be, 1% or 2%, that numbskull would be saving the United States of America up to $1 trillion per year. So he's calling the Fed chair a numbskull and essentially kind of threatening him to do what he wants him to do. I fully understand that my strong criticism of him makes it more difficult for him to do what he should be doing, lowering rates. But I've tried it all different ways. I've been nice. Have you? I've been neutral. Have you? And I've been nasty. Yes, you have. And nice and neutral didn't work. He's a dumb guy and an obvious Trump hater who should have never been there. I listened to someone that I shouldn't have listened to, and Biden shouldn't have reappointed him. We have virtually no inflation. And our economy is doing really well and will soon be doing, with the tremendous tariff income coming in and factories being built all over the country, better than it has ever done before. If he was concerned about inflation or anything else, then all he has to do is to bring the rate down so we can benefit on interest costs and raise it in the future when and if these other elements happen, which I doubt they will. Don't say that you think there will be inflation sometime in the future, because there isn't now, but if there is, raise the rates. We should be at the top of the attached list, not the bottom. I don't know why the board doesn't override the total and complete moron. Wow, total and complete moron. Maybe, just maybe, I'll have to change my mind about firing him. Of course, he doesn't have, I think, the legal right to do so. But regardless, his term ends shortly. It's just absolutely incredible. So, yeah, that's another Trump tirade. And then we have this one against Jessica Tarlov, who is so on point all the time. Jessica Tarlov is she's easily the best thing on Fox News by a country mile. Why does Fox News allow failed TV personality Jessica Tarlov to soil the five? So the five are four people who fawn over Trump and one liberal who has to fight against the other four. And he can't handle that. So he wants all five to be fawning. This is how you have a dictatorship. I want the entire media landscape to be lovely to me, to just think of me as their dear leader and say only the very nicest things to me. Jessica Tarlov, she's horrible. Get her off the five. Her voice, her manner, and above all else, what she says are a disgrace to television broadcasting. I've had the best poll numbers that I've ever had, and she is constantly saying the exact opposite. And he's actually got the worst poll numbers he's ever had. And in the history of American governance and presidential polls, at this stage in the presidency, he has the worst polls ever. What he's doing is like picking, say, a Rasmussen poll or something like that and saying, oh, look at this. So the just out highly respected Rasmussen poll. Rasmussen is not highly respected. It is a pro-Republican pollster that is not respected at all. Is at 56%, Insider Advantage 54%, and many others are at 56 to 68%. Sadly, the audience has to listen to her spew off that I'm doing poorly in the polls while I'm beating the Democrats by 15 percentage plus points. And more importantly, I just won an election against two candidates, Sleepy Joe and Kamala, in a landslide by winning all 7 swing states and the popular vote by millions, and records broken everywhere. In all fairness to Jesse and Greg, two other people on the panel with Jessica Tarlov, who are terrific. That's Jesse Waters and Greg Gutfeld. They don't see all of these poll numbers and can't therefore come to my defense. But I can. Nobody can stand Tarlov. She lies over and over over again. And MAGA is complaining big league that she's all over Fox. Watch their ratings go down by keeping her on the show. Nobody wants to listen to her. Why doesn't she talk about the fact that I had 0 illegal aliens coming into our country last month, where sleepy Joe Biden allowed 62,000 people in, many from prisons, mental institutions and gangs? People like Jessica Tarlov make MAGA absolutely hate Fox. Of course, what he's trying to do is send Fox viewers to places like OAN and Newsmax, or even further to the right. Someone asks Grok, what is Trump's factual and accurate approval rating? As of June the 20th, 2025, Donald Trump's approval rating is approximately 40 to 41%, based on recent polls. Pew Research reports 41%, while others range from 38% Quinnipiac to 47% Morning Consult. Variations stem from differing methodologies and sample demographics. No single figure is definitive, but 41% seems a reasonable average given the data. So they're saying, Grok says 41%, he's claiming 56, 54, and 68% even. And it's just nonsense. So yeah, and Jessica Tarlov is just always on point. Here she is talking about 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 week.
But this idea that Donald Trump adheres to deadlines is absolutely ludicrous. The man promised us a healthcare plan over 450 weeks ago. It has been infrastructure week since I was born. Russia's sanctions are supposed to be coming in 2 weeks. A tax plan. 2 weeks is meaningless. Jesse might be right. It may happen tomorrow. It may happen in 2 weeks. It may happen in a year. I don't know. But they're going to have to deal with the fact that there is a contrast within the intel community right now. Caroline Levitt from the podium is essentially parroting Israel or Mossad's assessment of the risk from Iran, saying that this could be a couple of weeks. Our intel community is saying that it could be several months to a year, which is what Tulsi Gabbard testified to in March. And apparently the intel community is completely split on this. Donald Trump is going to have to pick which camp he's in on this. It seems like he's leaning towards Bibi's assessment of it, that this is impending doom and that you need to decide within, the fake 2 weeks. But that's some really tough stuff, because what is the plan for afterwards? I don't see how you do this without trying for regime change.
I would say it's preposterous.
So I would say it's preposterous, blah, blah, blah. So then she just gets attacked by the other 4. I mean, at least she no longer has Jeanine Pirro, isn't it, who's now been tasked with being the Attorney General in Washington. She can take her wine over there, I guess. But you still got Jesse Waters, who is just horrific, and Greg Gutfeld. And then another. I think this person generally changes, but it's often I don't know her name. Sorry. But yeah, so Jessica Tarlov fighting there, and then just getting absolutely rinsed by Donald Trump, who is essentially trying to have a completely compliant media around him. So here already it's 4-1, 4 conservatives against 1 liberal, and they just pile in on Jessica Tarlov, and she's magnificent, and she has all the stats. She always has the stats and the receipts, and she makes them all look like absolute amateurs on a regular basis. But it just gives you a sign of I think the dictatorial nature of Trump, while also those statements showing that he's desperate to get the Nobel Peace Prize. You should give me the Nobel Peace Prize for Rwanda. Have you looked at the Congo, Serbia, Kosovo? He thinks he personally is responsible for all of those, for everything that goes on there. He can even put them on a map. John Jackson says, within a week of targeted political assassination of multiple Democratic lawmakers in Minnesota. And I did a video on this yesterday talking about political violence. Please go and check it out. I think it was super important. It's only, it's not huge viewership, only a couple of thousand views, but it's really, really important. It's called Minnesota Assassination, Political Violence, Rhetoric, and Ideology, the Left versus the Right Analysis. So I analyse what people have said about the assassination, how people have reacted in terms of how Senator Mike Lee, for example, Donald Trump himself, Elon Musk and others reacted to the assassination, and then the attempt to change Grok because it was showing that actually, no, Elon Musk, you're wrong, the far left isn't murderously violent. But actually, that's overwhelmingly the case for the far right in political contexts. So he's then going to go out and change Grok so it gives him the answers he wants, and it's all thoroughly problematic. But here's just another example. Mila Joy, who is a conservative influencer. Just again, this is political violence. She says a former US vice president received Secret Service protection for up to 6 months after leaving office, as authorized by the former vice president's Protection Act of 2008. She's talking about Kamala Harris is entitled to protection for 6 months after she leaves office. She ends it off with this. Kamala only has SS protection until July the 20th, 2025. TikTok, Kamala. Holy crap. What were you TikToking? That her protection goes, and what are you asking for people to assassinate her? This is a standard of political discourse at the moment. It's very, very dangerous. And then Elon Musk, and I've already reported on this, a little bit more detail that he's coming out with, because he's trying to retrain his Grok AI model to have a right-wing bias, because he didn't like that it came out with facts and data that was disagreeing with his ideological statements. So Elon Musk says, we will use Grok 3.5, maybe we should call it 4, which has advanced reasoning to rewrite the entire corpus of human knowledge, adding missing information and deleting errors, then retrain on that. Far too much garbage in any foundation model trained on uncorrected data. So he's saying that all the data that's out there in the world, all the journal entries and papers and data collection that the world has done that is stored online, he's saying just it needs deleting, those errors need deleting, and it needs correcting. Like, on what basis are you making these claims? So you're just like, stuff that you don't like the conclusions of is therefore, is wrong. So that piece of research that showed that, I don't know, there's more right-wing violence than left-wing, that is wrong because I don't like the sound of it. And so therefore I'm going to delete that from my AI model, and I'm going to retrain the model, and then there you go. So Elliot Higgins says, you'd think Elon would be familiar with the phrase garbage in, garbage out. Having an LLM decide what the correct version of the entirety of human knowledge is, deciding what's wrong and deleting errors in a recursive fashion, is a profoundly stupid idea, even for Elon. Just incredible. Just absolutely incredible. Then just talking about like the power of information and information manipulation. Here is a 10-second video of a Chinese AI agent running 50 different social media bot accounts at once. This is how posts by Jackson Hinkle, Jake Shields and Nick Fuentes, so all just horrific people, get boosted. This is how other countries manipulate the narrative and the discussions. And then, have a little bit of outlay in terms of money, budgetary outlay. Very little, really, all things considered. Just pay for your blue ticks on Twitter to give you. And what you'll find is blue ticks are supposed to give you the ability to write more characters, right? So if we find someone that's maybe a little bit, this isn't controversial. If we go and find someone like, I guess, Elon Musk, and then look at what he has to say. And what happens is your blue ticks give you the ability to write more, so you can really substantiate what you are claiming, and then it gives you more amplification. So it puts you on the algorithm, puts you right at the top of responses, so you get prioritized. So Elon Musk says something here, and I don't know if we see. So very many people underneath. This isn't a very good example from what I see. Quite a few people are writing stuff. It's quite a big, chunky subject. So I'm not doing a very good job of explaining myself here. But often what you see on divisive comments are just hundreds of blue tick people just putting like 3 or 4 words, right? That skew the conversation. It makes it look like this person has said something divisive and loads of people agree with them, but the people agreeing are blue ticks that are shunted to the top, and you're wondering why they paid to get blue ticks, since they're not utilizing the amount of characters they're entitled to. And what this is largely bots and trolls, or bots really, that's paid for, and all they need to do is write 3 words. You program in just a very short phrase, pumps it up to the top of the responses, and whenever you come across this comment, a divisive comment by someone who is divisive themselves, it appears that loads and loads of people are really supportive of them, and that return on investment they're getting from a relatively small outlay for blue checks. So like I said before, rather than buy the Russians, rather than spend money on an Iskander-M ballistic missile, $1 million on a ballistic missile, go and spend that on blue checks on Twitter and you will get a greater return on investment. So you might think, why are they spending all this money on blue checks? Honestly, it pays back. And here's, by the way, just I'll throw this in because Kellogg Robertson was talking about this. Elon Musk is now platforming Phidias Paniatou, who is a really divisive figure who is a non-attached member of the EU Parliament. I forget which country he is. He's not Malta. He's Cyprus. He's Cypriot. Anyway, he's like basically pro-Russian, and he's totally anti-EU. And Elon Musk here saying NGOs should not be funded by the governments to lobby elected representatives. And his platform in Phidias Paniatou, who is someone that Kellogg Robertson has scare quotes interviewed. They had a big argument, and it was clear that Paniatou was he voted against or abstained and then campaigned against like the return of Ukrainian children who have been kidnapped and whatnot. But yeah, so yeah. Let's have a look at Alex Jones, who conspiracy theorist and nutjob, talking about sort of Russia here, and then the sort of people you've got responding, all of these blue ticks, because of course they get pumped to the top, the blue ticks, quite often, but not always, short responses, America first, America only, I was worrying there for a while, normalcy has returned, Russia, blah, 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 well said, you've finally said it, congratulations, blah, 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 and then, you just have wow, lol, and then all of these blue ticks are essentially acting to boost the original OP, what Alex Jones has said. And so what you have is like a large proportion of these blue ticks are paid for by Russia, Iran, North Korea, China, and a lot of them will be bots. And so, you just have the eye emojis there or whatever. And yeah, so that then just boosts Alex Jones's post to getting far, far more coverage, and it's just all part and parcel of the disinformation projects and the information warfare that's going on around the world. And it's often bots that are doing this now, I think probably replacing trolls, as you can, instead of employing 1,000 people to sit in an office block with multiple accounts, you can have one person manipulating multiple accounts through AI usage, etc., etc. Okay, what else do we have? This is so another like AI related issue that I have. I'm just going to very quickly talk about this. I've talked about Palantir, but you got Meta and OpenAI. You got AI, big old corporations that are at the heart of the American government and getting more and more powerful. Palantir particularly. Now the US military has commissioned top AI executives as officers. They've literally shoved in 4 rich AI company CEO type people in at a level that would normally take you 20 years to get to militarily. The US Army has formally enlisted top executives from OpenAI, Meta and Palantir, not as advisors, but as uniformed officers. This marks the launch of Detachment 201, a new innovation unit aimed at integrating private sector AI expertise directly into military operations. So you could say this is like a good thing, but many people are like really reacting against this. Their mission is to deploy commercial AI solutions across military domains, from reconnaissance and targeting to next generation weapons development. Reflects their broader shifts already underway. Palantir is deeply embedded in the US and NATO command structures, supporting everything from logistics to real-time strike planning. OpenAI has strengthened ties with defense contractors since former NSA director Paul Nakasone joined on its board, and Google, Meta and other tech firms have lifted internal bans on building combat AI systems. So now it's all looking like we're going towards a kind of Skynet sort of Terminator style situation. Bottom line, the US isn't just militarizing AI, it's institutionalizing corporate technocratic control over the armed forces. Battlefield decisions will increasingly be shaped not just by military officers, but by corporate run AI systems. Key parts of the US war machine are being handed over to tech conglomerates. So that is, you might think is a good thing, you might think it's really concerning. Here's someone that thinks it's really concerning. So this person is a veteran. Excuse a bit of the colorful language involved here.
We are in deep shit. When I say that we are in deep shit, we are in deep shit. You see these four right here? These are CEOs, COOs from Palantir, Meta, and OpenAI, multi-billionaires who are being sworn into our U.S. Army reserves as lieutenant colonels. So Commander Bonespur and Pete Kegsbreath came up with a new detachment called Detachment 201, the Army's Executive Innovation Corps, or EIC. Last I checked, when anyone wants to join the military, they have to go through basic training, they have to go through MOS training, they also have to go through a background check to be able to obtain a security clearance, whether it's secret or top secret. But yet, we're giving these four billionaires who are in charge of monitoring our information, our data, through Meta, through Palantir, and OpenAI, we're giving them the key to our defense. They are being sworn in as lieutenant motherfucking colonels, lieutenant colonels. Whereas for some of us who actually served, it takes us years and years and years, up to maybe 25 years just to get that rank, just to be able to obtain that rank. So on June 13th, the Army announced the creation of Detachment 201, otherwise known as the Executive Innovation Corps, which it describes as a new initiative designed to fuse cutting-edge tech expertise with military innovation. 4 ultra-wealthy executives from top tech companies were sworn into the unit ahead of President Trump's heavily promoted military parade, which was itself sponsored by Palantir. The Army's top spokesman declared that the Detachment 201 was being created to bring in tech innovation executive leaders to help the Army with the recruitment and the subsequent training of tech-focused people. So if it's not bad enough that we've got these 4 CEOs here that are in charge of meddling and having access to our private information, now they're going into the military and now they're going to use AI technology. This is a direct control of military innovation. This would include AI surveillance, cyber weapons, and autonomous drones. So now Trump and Pete Kegsbreath are trying to weaponize our military by the use of these super wealthy CEOs from OpenAI, Meta, and Palantir. And with the rank that they are obtaining, they have control over their subordinates. Sergeants, sergeants first class, first sergeants, and command sergeant majors. They have more rank than those that have already served. And these motherfuckers didn't even go through training. This is what happens when you elect a motherfucking clown and you get a circus in return.
So it's definitely an interesting discussion to be had around that. I'm sure there's kind of merits in some of the thinking there, but it is slightly worrying that entities like Palantir are becoming just unable to be challenged. I think just supreme power, and this is the worry that people like Carol Cadwalader have, who are campaigning consistently against sort of data mining by these entities. Now, just a few bits on Iran. Wall Street Journal reports that Europe's Iran nuclear talks have ended without a breakthrough. So it's hoped, but that the Europeans could. I mean, it's never going to happen. Benjamin Netanyahu is going to continue doing what he's doing until he feels he's succeeded, unless Israel is stopped. So talks with top European officials have failed to bring Iran closer to concessions on its nuclear program as the Trump administration considers backing Israeli strikes. Reporters say to Trump, well, Trump says to reporters, "You are even in danger talking to me right now." Really? Okay, what does he have to say?
Are you concerned that Iran or its proxies would wage terror attacks against American targets abroad if you order military action?
We're always concerned about that, and we have to take them out and be very strong. You're even in danger talking to me right now. Do you know that? You are in danger talking to me right now. So I should probably get out of here. But you guys are actually in danger. Can you believe it?
I think it's hard to make that request right now. If somebody is winning, it's harder to do than if somebody is losing, but we are ready, willing, and able. So interesting admission there from Trump that actually it's going to be very difficult to stop Netanyahu because Netanyahu's winning. The Israelis are winning. And actually, if he wanted to stop... But again, this goes back to how Netanyahu's pulling the strings and Trump is just along for the ride, I guess. So then there was this idea of like Tulsi Gabbard and the intelligence community concluding differently to how Trump sees it.
They didn't do that.
What intelligence do you have that Iran is building a nuclear weapon? Your intelligence community has said they have no evidence that they are at this point.
Well, then my intelligence community is wrong. Who in the intelligence community said that?
Your director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard.
She's wrong.
I can't believe he'd say who said that. Like, honestly, just these little things give you a massive insight. Like, he doesn't have a clue. So this goes back to the three people that are informing him. You've got Stephen Miller and you've got Will Scharf, I think it is. That's his name. And you got Sergio Gore. And he lives in this kind of ecosystem where he's being fed. Will Scharf feeds him what he needs to know, or what Will Scharf thinks he needs to know in terms of delivering the agenda, the policy agenda of Stephen Miller. And then Sergio Gore puts in place all these people around Trump to kind of reinforce that. Does Trump know that in March, Tulsi Gabbard made an announcement that the intelligence community thinks X, Y, and Z, which is completely different to what Donald Trump thinks, because he's had a phone call with Bibi Netanyahu and Netanyahu said, well, they're going to have nukes in a couple of weeks or whatever. And so that's what Trump believes. So the fact that he hasn't gone back to his intelligence community to say, by the way, I just want to know if Netanyahu's right, he doesn't seem to have done that, because otherwise he'd know who in his intelligence community thinks what about Iran's nuclear readiness. This is just absolutely incredible. So who said that? Well, Tulsi Gabbard said that. Everyone, we all know this. Like, she said it back in March, and your intelligence community thinks completely different to you. Oh, they're wrong. She's wrong. They're wrong. On what basis are you making that claim? It's absolutely staggering. And then we hear from the Israelis that Israel will not stop its attacks on Iran until the nuclear threat is eliminated, and said Israeli UN envoy Danny Danon. In response, Iran's ambassador Amir Saeed Iravani urged the UN Security Council to intervene and voice concern over possible US involvement. So it doesn't look like the Israelis are going to stop. Obviously, they're not. They're right in the middle of it. They won't stop at all. How far will they go, and what happens about Fordo? I guess we're going to have to wait and see. Anyway, that's enough from me. Total worries about what's going on in good old Trump world again. Crazy times. Anyway, take care. Speak to you soon. Toodle pips. Oh, and please remember the Car for Ukraine fundraiser. Follow ATPGeopolitics.com /donate, and you will get to the Car for Ukraine campaign. It's not this one, it's the summer one, and here we have it. Learn more. Summer Sunshine Trucks. Make sure that you click on the ATP Geopolitics one and help out there. Thank you very much to all of those who have. We're just going for one vehicle on this campaign, so we just need to get over the sort of 11,000 mark, and then we will have completed it. But thank you to those who have donated. That's absolutely fantastic, including several who have done so today. So that's really cool. Take care. Speak to you soon.